Talk Radio.
Chamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit Neye AKANFO NANASOM Da Medinde Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan Akwamuman Amaruka Atifi Odwirafo. That means greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning Africans, Black people. Today is AKANFO NANASOM Day, Ancient Authentic Akhan Ancestral Religion Day. My name is Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan, Odwirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Yet I say we thank you for tuning in. Once again, we apologize for the late start. We had a tight schedule tonight, so we just wanted to make sure that we tried to get in as soon as possible. So may I say for holding on. We're going to open up the chat room right now. For individuals who are on the phone line, if you have a question or a comment, of course, you can hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. For those who are logging into the chat room, if you have a question or a comment in the chat room, just hit the number. You must log in with the username in order to interact in the chat room. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one in Blog Talk quickly, and then we can interact. I'm going to put a link to the UBEN-HYENG, the Ancestral Summon, in the piece right now. UBEN-HYENG, the Ancestral Summons, is one of the texts we'll be dealing with tonight. And also we have a couple of other texts, a couple of other links that we're going to put in here. And so for individuals who are new to the information, new to the program and so forth, and this, of course, is our NHOMA page, publications page, individuals who are new to the program, we have 3 programs on a weekly basis, 3 broadcasts: AKANFO NANASOM, Ancient Authentic Akhan Ancestral Religion, on Joda on Monday nights. We deal specifically with the Akhan expression of ancestral religion. There's, of course, misinformation regarding Akhan culture, Akhan philosophy, Akhan cosmology coming from individuals in the Western Hemisphere who have been misinformed, also from individuals on the continent who have been infected with pseudo-religion, white culture, Islam, Christianity, and just white culture in general, that has infected their practice of ancestral religion over the past, specifically, primarily the past 100 to 200 years. Those infections have been woven into the fabric of the culture. Therefore, the information that is coming forth from many individuals who are elders and eldresses and purported and priests and priestesses on the continent is often infected with pseudo-cosmology and so forth. So then when people seek to go and gather that information, it's tainted. And then we return. Very often individuals come, back to America with misinformation and propagate that misinformation. So what we are dealing with on Joda Monday nights is ancient, authentic Akhan ancestral religion. And we show the connection between not only Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit ancestral religion and ancient Khanat, which is the title of Nubia. We migrated from some of our people from ancient Khanat, the Khanit land, the first land, the foremost land, land of the south, and so forth. Khan means first and foremost. It also means to count or to reckon, of course. That is what it means in ancient Khanat, Nubia, and Kemet. It also means the same thing in the Akhan language, of course. We migrated from ancient Khanat, the Khanit land, migrated west a couple of thousand years ago to reestablish Akhana civilization. The empire of Akhana or Ghana was established about 1,000 years later because of Muslim invasions. We saw the neighborhood deteriorating, as we always say, so we migrated from that region towards the forest belt and reestablished Akhana civilization about 1,000 years ago in the forest belt regions and the savanna regions of what is today's Ghana and Ivory Coast. And a few hundred years later, some of our people were taken directly from that region and forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Musuwa-Kesie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And this is how Akhan people, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in general, and of course Akhan people as well, were forced into North, Central, South America and the Caribbean. We maintained our ancient, authentic, ancestral religion from ancient Khanat, the Khanit land, the Akhani land, Nubia. We maintained that same tradition all the way through to West Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnit, West Africa, and into the Western Hemisphere. Same Abosom, the same divinity that we invoked in ancient Khanat, in ancient Kemet as well. We still invoke those same divinities in West Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnit by the same names, and we still invoke these same divinities in the Western Hemisphere. So Akhan people, of course, maintain our ancestral religious practices. For those Akhan folks, for example, in Jamaica, under the form of Obia, that is the Akhan tradition as we brought it into Jamaica. Obia comes from Obaifo, an Akhan tradition. That's the title. The Bai is the spiritual force, often misnomered witchcraft, but a higher psychic force that we employ for various ritual practices. In South America, for example, in Suriname, the Akhan people in Suriname, often called Saramaka and others, they maintain the Akhan tradition under the form of Winti, and they still worship the Abosom and so forth under that form. The same Abosom we worship in ancient Khanat, the same Abosom we worship in West Africa, Afuraitkaitnit, they still continue to worship these same forces in nature as well. In North America, we have continued the Akhan tradition under the form of hoodoo, which is different from voodoo and different from juju in North America. Hoodoo is an Akhan term. Of course, voodoo comes from the Fon and Ewe languages. Juju is actually a Yoruba word. So as we've mentioned before, Yoruba people who came directly to North America, they continued the Yoruba religion under the form of Juju and continued that Yoruba practice for hundreds of years in North America, not imported from the Caribbean, not imported from South America, directly from the continent. They maintained the Yoruba tradition under the form of Juju. The Fon and Ewe people maintained the Vodun tradition under the form of Vodou, of course, and later Voodoo in North America, not because of migrations from the Caribbean or South America, Haiti, and so forth, but coming directly from Benin, coming directly from Dahomey into North America and maintain Vodou in North America. AKANFO maintained the Akhan tradition in North America for hundreds of years. And of course, as we talk about in our book, Hoodoo people, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit in North America, Akhan custodians of hoodoo from ancient hoodoo or Nduru land, ancient Khanit Nubia. We show specifically that the term hoodoo comes from Undu in the Akhan language, which means medicine, specifically root medicine, root work, and so forth. It also means conjure, to conjure the spirits of the forces in nature and the nananom insama for the spiritually cultivated ancestors and ancestors. We show that etymology and that cosmology, and we also show that those same terms mean the exact same thing in ancient Khanat, Nubia. In fact, the title of ancient Khanat was the Undu land, the people called the Undu people. So we maintained our tradition. So when we show that, when we're talking about AKANFO NANASOM, we're talking about an ancestrally inherited tradition. And we inherit our ancestral religion transcarnationally through successive reincarnation. The Abosom that are assigned to us by the Supreme Being pre-incarnation are assigned to us and come into the world with us. We are born with them. The Nananom Nsamafo, the spiritually cultivated ancestors and ancestors who are assigned to us by Nyamewa, Nyame, the great mother and great father, Supreme Being, called Amenet and Amen, are assigned to us pre-incarnation. They come into the world with us. So we are born with Abosom, born with quote-unquote Orisha, as they call them in Yoruba tradition, and Vodou, as they're called in Fon and Ewe. We are born with Abosom, forces in nature assigned to our spirit. We are born with Nananom Nsamafo, who are assigned to assist us in our development. Pre-incarnation, we come into the world, and therefore we have a tradition when we are born into the world. And all we need to do is align with that tradition. Nobody can give us Abosom forces in nature. Only the Supreme Being does that, and we are born with it. So this is the kind of information we deal with on AKANFO NANASOM. Of course, on Abinada Tuesdays, we have Ojida, which means purification. That is our broadcast. Ojira means purification as well as the celebration of purification. In the Akhan language, of course, Jira, in the Medutu, in the hieroglyphs, we show Jira also means purification and a celebration of purification in ancient Kemet and Kana. So we deal with ancestral religion in general and how it impacts every aspect of our lives. That's on Benada, Abenada Tuesdays, and then, of course, Awukuda or Akuada Wednesdays. We have Egua Marketplace. We showcase Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, and institutions that are serving our community in a positive capacity, but also maintain and convey our ancestral religious values in the process. We are in the midst of our Okom economic development model operation. We are targeting one Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit business, organization, or institution per week for 52 weeks. The business of the week is Kamali Academy, owned by Dr. Samori Kamara, and he will be on the show this coming Awukuda for Egua Marketplace, so we will be updating you on that. And again, for the people who are coming in, apologies for the late start. Had a tight schedule tonight, but we're here. So we have been in the midst of a series on AKANFO NANASOM, dealing with ritual practice. Now, previous to this series, we had a 7-part series on the spiritual organs within Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. We talked about the Ba, the Baet, the Ka, the Kayet, the Aku, the Akut. We talked about the Sahu, the Sunsum, the spirit. We talked about the Ab and Hati. We talked about the Samain, which is also the Kahibit and so forth, and the Sunsuma and the Shoot, which is the so-called shadow, and so forth. And we also talked about the Kat, the physical body. We talked about the nature and function of these different aspects of our spiritual anatomy and properly define these spiritual organs, as well as the physical body, the container of these spiritual organs. Because misinformation has been put forward about the Ba and Ba'et, the Ka and Ka'et, the Aku, Akud, and so forth, and the Sahu. We show that these exact same spiritual organs in the Akhan language by the same name with the same function, properly defined. And so therefore we properly define them. For example, many people mistranslate the Ka as the spirit or the quote-unquote ghost and so forth. They mistranslate the Ba as the soul, totally inaccurate. So we did a 7-part series on that, properly defining these spiritual organs within Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. What we have been doing over the past few weeks, and culminating this week, is talking about ritual practice in relationship to these various spiritual organs. The first week we talked about Nkomre, ancestral shrine, communication, and liberation. So we talked about the ritual practice of establishing a shrine to the Nananom Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of your direct blood circle. The next week we talked about the nature of the Okrawa, which is the Akhan term for Ka and Kayet, the soul, the divine consciousness, the divinity in the head region that is assigned to you by the Supreme Being, called the Ori Inu in the Yoruba tradition, and Chi in Igbo, and the Selido in Vodun, called Kra in Akhan, Krawa, male and female, called Ka, as well as Kayet in ancient Kemet, the deity that is assigned to dwell with you in your head region and guide you throughout the course of your life. Coded within that force in nature is the function you have to execute in creation, as well as the spiritual capacities you've been given, the specific configuration of energy you have been given to support that function. So if you're given a function to be an immune system cell within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, then that is your function. But then you are given a specific configuration of energy, a certain kind of fire power associated with certain fiery Abosom, divinity, that allow you to execute that function. So that is all encoded within your spirit's brain and your Ka, your Ka'et, that divinity. So we talked about that, but we talked about the ritual process of Akragware, cleansing or washing the Kra, washing the soul, so to speak, as it's called in the Akhan tradition. Following week, we talked about the Ba and Ba'et. We talked about the ritual to regulate life, the divine living energy animating us, manifested as that human-headed bird sitting in the chest. Of course, the bird with the head of the human being, of the person, the bird with its folded wings down and its breast and so forth. Of course, it sits in the heart and lung complex, and the heart is like the breast, and the lungs are the two folded wings. Of course, your head is the head of that Ba bird. That's the divine living energy animating your bloodstream, animating your spirit body. It is a child as a Ba, male, or Ba'et, female, of the great Ba and the great Ba'et, the great Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress. They direct one of their children, divine living force, to dwell within us, and we can direct that force to connect with our Kra, our soul, our divine consciousness, so we can execute our function in creation. We are empowered to do so through the agency of the Ba and Ba'et. So we went into detail about that, and we talked about ritual practices on how to deal with that divine living energy to regulate that flow of energy. The next week we talked about sacred deliberation. We talked about the Aku and Akut, the spiritual force that takes up residence in the pineal gland, which is the seat or the shrine within your body for the Aku, male, or Akut, female, called Honam in the Akhan tradition. We talked about in spirit, in discipline. When we talked about the Akra complex, we talked about the soul, and we called it soul responsibility, talking about the responsibility of the individual to align their divine function encoded within the soul, the Ka, the Kayat. The following week, we talked about in-spirit discipline, not embodied discipline, but to in-spirit discipline, and we talked about the Ba and Ba'et. And the following week, of course, is sacred deliberation, talking about arriving at decisions through a divinely ordered process connected to the Aku, the Akut, and so forth. So we went into detail about that, dealing with that spiritual organ and ritual practices associated with that. The following week, we dealt with the Ab and Hati, the spiritual heart, Ab, and the Hati, the heart-lung complex. We talked about the weighing of the heart and so forth and all its implications. And then we talked about that whole ritual process of dealing with the heart, dealing with a ritual process to equilibrate your energy. Emotion hardening, strengthening yourself so you're not thrown off emotionally, engaging in processes that lead to emotional instability. The emotional energy or the external moving energy that manifests through you, you balance your energy in a harmonious fashion. So we talked about the equilibration of that energy through ritual practice. Tonight we're going to deal with the Honam, which is the term for, in the Akhan tradition, the physical body. Of course, the physical body is the repository for the physical organs, of course, but your physical organs are shrines of the spirit organ. But there are also shrines that are relay stations for the energy, the tumi, the power of the Abosom, the forces in nature. So what we're going to deal with, first we're going to get into the UBEN-HYENG, the Ancestral Summons, one of our publications. We're going to deal with the section of that. So if you download the UBEN-HYENG, of course, all of our 16 books, the ebook versions of all of our 16 books are free. And we do, of course, sell the soft cover versions as well. We're gonna pull up this document real quick. And if you get to, that would be page 12. Page 12 in the UBEN-HYENG. All right, just want to second right quick to get this situated. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go through this particular document, and then we're going to, of course, discuss its implications with regard to the nature of the functioning of the physical body. And when we're dealing with ritual, we're talking about ritual to purify life. We talked about the nature and function of the physical body as a shrine for the Abosom, and of course a repository of all of our physical organs and our spiritual organs as well, but a shrine for the Abosom as well. We talked about that in that previous broadcast. We're going to deal with it from the angle of ritual practice and purification and making sure that we maintain the sanctity of the physical body as a vessel for the Abosom to manifest through us into the human sphere, the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African human sphere. So this particular section is called Creation is Ritual Incarnation. And again, for those who are new, the UBEN-HYENG, the Ancestral Summons, this particular publication, of course, all of the publications we put forward are informed by the Nananum for the ancestresses and ancestors spiritually cultivated, as well as the Abosom. We get, inspired and motivated to put this information out. They direct us. We ask them when we engage in ritual practice to direct us to evidence of the information that they share so that we can go and investigate, gather that data, publish that data, of course, edit and put it out. So therefore, when people study that information, they can investigate it as well, find those references as well, confirm that information as well, and incorporate it into their lives. The UBEN-HYENG, similar process. They gave the information, they gave the titles of these different essays and so forth, and the specific examples. So it's, in this sense, they're specifically speaking through these documents. So the rhetorical questions that you find here are the same questions that the Nananom Nsamampo put to us so that we can put forward. So it's slightly different from the rest of the publications. The other publications come in the same fashion, but then we, gather various forms of documentation, data, references, and list all of those in the publication. This is the Nsamampo speak. So, creation is ritual incarnation. Can you see in the dream state? Can you hear in the dream state? Can you taste, touch, smell, desire in this state? Yet your body lay motionless in the dark. No sounds, no light, no activity. What then is it that sees, hears, senses beyond the body? You, as spirit, are living energy. We're talking about the Ba and Ba'at here. Your soul, your Ka, your Kayat, is your consciousness, describes the non-physical form which you assume as spirit. Your body is the physical replication of your non-physical form, spirit soul, or Ba Ka, Ba'at Kayat. Is this not true of spirit with a capital S? Is Goddess God, speaking of Ra and Ra'at, as spirit, not the life energy of creation? Does Goddess God as soul consciousness not determine her or his form? Does Goddess God as creatress, creator, spirit, soul not incarnate perpetually through time as a multitude of forms in as creation as the physical world universe? Water passes through air in the ritual of precipitation as various drops of water. Creative power passes through time in the ritual of creation as various phases of power. Every phase of power performs a primary function, thus revealing its nature, its personality. Every phase of spirit's power is a spirit power, a deity, a goddess or god. We're talking about the children of Ra and Ra'at. Are you not of spirit? Talking about Ra and Ra'at. Is your procreative power not of creative power? Does your procreative power then not manifest through the cycle of your lifetime as various phases of power? Do the various phases of your power perform primary functions, revealing their nature, their personality? Is not every phase of your spirit's power thus a spirit power, a divinity, a deity, a goddess or god? Creator, creatress, and creation is one. Spirit matter is one. Soul body is one. How else could creator, creatress manifest in physical form except the many forms of creative power be received and replicated in as matter? Is sun not a form of matter, an active expression of creative power? Is ocean not a form of matter, a passive expression of creative power? What of the atmosphere? What of earth? What of your forms? What is your heart, if it is not a form of your body matter, an active expression of your procreative power? What is your blood, if it is not a form of your body matter, a passive expression of your procreative power? What of your corona? What of your organs? You as spirit matter are a synthesis of the divinity. Creation is ritual incarnation. Does creation not ritualize the incarnation of the great ancestral spirit, meaning Ra and Ra'at? Should not procreation then ritualize the incarnation of an ancestral spirit? Talking about when we bring our ancestresses and ancestors back into the world. Does creation not ritualize the incarnation of the spirit power, the divinity? Should not sexual activity, procreation, then be ritual invocation of the incarnate spirit power? Who questions creation as a ritual incarnation? To destroy creation is to reject the deities incarnate in as creation, to strain and damage bodily organs, glands, structures, through non-ritual sex procreation, through improper diet and behavior, is to reject the deities incarnate in as your physical body. Such rejection is the only death. So we are talking about creation as a ritual incarnation. And Ra and Riot moves through creation, moving through the black substance of space. The spiritual force of expansion and contraction, spiraling through the black substance of space, carving out black spheres that become black bodies. Those black bodies are penetrated with the energy of Ra and Riot and become illuminate. Those illuminate bodies become the first stars. One of those stars, of course, is our Odwira, the sun. Birthed from that sun are various projectiles. One of them becomes one of the black spheres that becomes our planet Earth, the Asase Afua, the Earth Mother. The energy of Ra and Riot penetrates that primordial black orb and gives life to that primordial black orb, separates the lighter portions from the denser portions. You therefore have the atmosphere, and then you have the ocean, and then you have what is, in the core of Earth and so forth. The energy of Ra and Riot moves through the ocean floor and causes vibrations and volcanic eruptions on the ocean floor and cause a portion of the ocean floor to surge upward and break through the surface of the water, creating the first primordial mound, the first Ka and Kayet. And then Ra and Riot move through that first mound, that high land, the Ka, the Kayet, the high land. And when they move through that first mound, the high land, they're called Afura and Afuraitkait, Afu meaning flesh, Ra and Riot moving through the flesh, moving through matter. So Afura moves through the Ka, Afuraitkait moves through the Kayet, and of course, as we teach in our book, Afurakani and Afuraitkaitnit, the origin of the term Africa, the highland of Afura and Afuraitkait, the creator and creatress. So we're talking about the black substance of space, the great Ka and Kayet, that becomes spheres of that black substance. Portions of that black substance first become the first stars that become illuminate as they're carved out of the black substance by the fire and light energy of Ra and Riot. And those black stars, those black bodies eventually give birth to planets and so forth. The planets are formed of that black substance as well. And then the planets are formed, of course, our planet is formed, and the first landmass comes from that black substance that rises up from the ocean floor as well. And the bodies of our people were fashioned from that black substance, and that's where our Abosom or our melanin comes from, the first bodies of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people coming from that first primordial landmass, that first Ka and Kayet. So we're talking about Abosom, melanin, Kanut within our bodies. The black substance within our bodies is taken directly from the black substance of the first landmass of Earth, which is taken directly from the black substance of space, the great Ka and Kayet, the male and female force in nature called the grandmother and grandfather of the various divinities. And we went into detail about the cosmology of Kemenu and Amen and Amenet and Ka and Kayet and Hehu and Hehut and Nun and Nunet and so, and how Nun and Nunet then give birth to Ra and Riot, and then they move forward to create the universe. So we're talking about that black substance of space, Ka and Kayet, that the whites and their offspring now designate as dark energy and dark matter, which we have always known was a male and female force in creation that we still invoke today, who still communicate with our people today through ritual, through divination and so forth, never stop. So we can learn directly from Ka and Kayet because we know who they are. We don't just read about them and pontificate about them, we invoke them. And the same is true of all of the Abosom, all of the Orishas of Odu and so forth, including Ra and Riot and all of the others. So we're talking about the black substance of space that has the capacity to carry the energy of all things in creation, that carries the energy of Ra and Riot and regulates the energy of Ra and Riot, the divine energy of fire and light, moving through that black substance. A portion of that becomes our black body. As we're forming from the beginning, and then, of course, when people procreate, we have children, it's, taking up residence in the zygote of the newly formed body, of course, and that black substance is key to the development, the proper development of the child. Of course, it goes into the neuromelanin. Of course, it's all throughout the various organs and systems of the body and so forth. So you have that black substance, which is the foundational polymer for everything else in the body, just like the black substance of space contains all the various planets and so forth, these various organs and cells within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. The black substance of space is the divine body of melanin within the great divine body of Amenet and Amen. Just like your body is saturated with Abosom or melanin, the supreme being Amen and Amenet, who function together as a unit, two individual entities, a great father, a great mother, who function together as a unit, their great divine body, their melanin, their Ka, their Ka-et, that's the black substance of space. It manifests as the black substance of space, and the various suns and moons and so forth are the organs within that great black body, just like your organs and systems are the divinity within your body, so to speak. And then the organs give birth to cells, and those cells are children of the organs, children of the divinity, and we are the cells within the organs of the Supreme Being. Plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life only. We are the cells within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. Just as your heart cells serve the heart, and when they do so and support heart functions, they're serving the whole body. When we serve our parent organ that we are incarnate of, then we're serving the whole great divine body at the same time. And this is what we were talking about earlier when we're talking about a divinity is assigned to us pre-incarnation. We come into the world and carry that divinity's energy into our lifetime transcarnation. Same thing with the cells that are born in the heart or born in the liver or born in the spleen or born in the pancreas or born in the brain and so forth. They are born through that specific divinity, that regulative order within the great divine body, so they carry out those functions. We are children of different divinities. So that black substance, however, is the major substance that holds all of these various organs or divinities within the great divine body and within our body. So it's the thing that regulates order in the body. Of course, you have the red substance that carries the fire, the energy, the electromagnetic energy, the firepower, the Ba and Ba'et. That red substance is the blood circulating all throughout your system. So within your body, of course, you have the black land and the red land. You have Kamet and you have Desert. You have the melanin, the Abosom, the Kanu, the Katnut, and you have the red land that carries that fire. So just like you have on earth in ancient Kemet, the black land and the red land, you have it within your body. And of course, in the Akhan tradition, we still utilize that terminology. We have Asase Koko, the red earth, and Asase Tumtum, the black earth. When the Bono people in the Akhan tradition say Asase Koko Ma, we are Asase Koko, children of the red earth, or Asase Tumtum Ma'a, children of the black earth. And the Oyoko people say Oyoko Tumtum, the black Oyoko, and Oyoko Koko, the red Oyoko. They're talking about skin color, but they're also talking about the specific energy that is governing these regions. The energy of Alsar, Awusi, of course, governing the black soil substance, and the energy of Set, governing the red soil substance. So children of these divinities, as well as other divinities that carry that energy complex, they are dark brown people with black undertones if they carry that Alsarian energy, or they're dark brown people with red undertones if they carry that energy of Set, as well as other divinities who have that sacred color. So that it manifests in their phenotype, it manifests in their spiritual disposition, their energetic output. So it's not just talking about the soil, it's talking about the soil, but it's also talking about the people, it's also talking about the divinities that animate the people that they incarnate with. So we're talking about our bodies as sanctuaries for divinity, sanctuaries for the energy of Ra and Ra'et. Therefore, your body is sacred in the real sense. And this is why we're talking about creation as ritual incarnation. This is why at the end we say to destroy creation, to reject the deities incarnate in as creation, to strain or damage your bodily organs, glands, structures through non-ritual procreation, non-ritual sex or procreation through improper diet and behavior, is to reject the divinities incarnate in as your physical body. Your physical organs are shrines. We talked about the notion of shrine, Nkombre, as we call in the Akhan tradition. Nkombre, shrines are magnifiers of energy. And we give that example. So if you have leaves on the ground that are dry and it's sunny outside, it's 100 degrees and the sun is, shining down on those leaves, then the leaves will simply be warm. If you put a magnifying glass in between the sunlight and the leaves and position it properly, the same sunlight is moving in the same, at the same rate. But when it moves through that magnifying glass, the energy of the sun is magnified and it causes the leaves to combust and catch on fire. When we establish a properly structured encombra, it is a shrine, it is a magnifier of the energy of the Abosom, a magnifier of the energy of the Nananom-Nsamafo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. And therefore, it becomes intense in that region of our dwelling places or wherever we establish these shrines. And the forces in nature will take up residence in these shrines as long as we have erected these shrines according to their dictates when we invoke them and they communicate directly with us. They will take up residence and communicate with us through the agency of these shrines. Their energy will be magnified, and they will utilize these structures as centers to relay information and communicate directly with us. Therefore, we have a physical space for the spirit to take up residence in. We have physical bodies, and our spirits animate our physical bodies. Now we give a physical space for the Abosom of the Nananom-Nsamafo, the spirits of our ancestresses and ancestors, to take up residence in, and therefore there's a full physical and spiritual communication between us as spirits and our physical bodies and the shrine, the physical shrine they take up residence in, and we have an optimal level of communication in that regard. So the body is a shrine, sacred. When you pollute the body, you're taking in foods that don't belong in the body, you're polluting your shrine. It's no different than taking a garbage can and dumping it on your ancestral shrine, knowing that you're creating disorder when you engage in that process. You're doing the same thing to your internal shrine when you put foods in your bodies that do not belong. When you strain and damage your bodily organs through non-ritual sexual activity, procreation, through simple being engaged in lustful activity, promiscuity, and so forth. Of course, dissexuality, homosexuality is absolutely insane on every level, perverse, and the divinities hate order, and of course, dissexuality is a manifestation of disorder. So, of course, that's insane and out of there's just no possible reality to even embrace that nonsense, that perverse. It comes from the white snarl spring, but even engaging in normal sexual activity, but engaging in non-ritual sexual activity, you have sexual activity that, of course, is designed to bring forth an ancestor or ancestress back into the world. To engage in, just like Ra and Ra'et, creation is a process of the ritual incarnation of Ra and Ra'et into the physical world. Then procreation is the ritual incarnation or reincarnation of an ancestral spirit to return into the physical world. So that's one form of that. The other aspect of it is engaging in ritual sexual activity, ritual procreative activity. Anytime you arouse the energy of the creative power, your procreative power, if you're an Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit person, is directly linked to Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, who we call Inyokumpon and Inyokuntong in the Akhan language. And we're the only Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people who have that direct link to that energy. As we talked about before, the white snarl spring are totally disconnected from that. So all they have is lower level residual electromagnetic energy, no different than a magnet or, inanimate object. But we have a direct link from the Ba within us, the divine living energy within us, directly to the great Ba and by Ra and Ra'et. So our procreative power is a portion of the creative power with a capital C, divine creative power of Ra and Ra'et. The same power they use to create the universe, a portion of that procreative power woven and encoded within the Ba, the Bayet, is within us. So you cannot utilize the divine living energy of Ra and Ra'et in a corrupt fashion to engage and support lust or misguided desire or malice, an evil intent to pervert or destroy. You cannot utilize that energy in that fashion. If you seek to arouse that life-creating energy outside of procreative activity, and on the other hand, outside of ritual practice for balance and restoration and healing and furthering of the divine plan that's encoded within your krawa, if you attempt to misuse that energy, then you will be cut off from that energy, and the only thing you will have left is lower level, disconnected electromagnetic energy. So when you engage in disorder, when you engage in lust, you make yourself repulsive to the embodiments of divine order, which are the divinity. Just like we always say, if you have two magnets on the table with the same polarities facing, they repel one another. If you reverse your polarity and begin to engage in disorder, you make yourself repulsive to order. The forces in nature, the organs within the great divine body of the Supreme Being that regulate order in creation within the great divine body, they are embodiments of divine order. As soon as you seek to engage in disorder, you become repulsive and repelled. Now the energy you're projecting to them is repelled just like the magnet is repelled. Now your energy is cut off from the energy of Ra and Ra'et. The only thing you have left is that residual energy left over. And we've given the example of someone standing outside and receiving direct sunlight and being nourished and energized by direct sunlight. If that person goes inside of a shed and closes the door with no light, no windows or anything like that, the sunlight is hitting the shed and they can feel heat inside of the shed, but they're not receiving direct sunlight. They're receiving residual energy, which is the heat that's heating up the shed. But not only are they not receiving direct sunlight, they cannot be nourished by it, they cannot be energized by it. And in fact, if they remain in that area for a long period of time, they will actually begin to deteriorate. So they're dealing with residual energy that's disconnected from the source. And when you engage in disorder, you make yourself repulsive to the embodiments of order, the divinity. So therefore, you're cut off. And the only thing you have left to work with is a residual energy that's constantly constantly deteriorating, constantly depreciating in its value and in its function. So you only have a little bit of time left. So for example, when the whites in our spring, for example, they're talking about chi energy, and you have a certain amount of prenatal chi. You don't want to use up the prenatal chi, because if you misuse it through misguided arousal and things like that, then you lose your energy. That has nothing to do with black people. That has to do with the whites in their offspring who are totally disconnected from Ra and Ra'et. So all they have is a specified amount of lower level electromagnetic residual energy. We are connected to the Creator and Creatress. In Yonkumpon and in Yonkunton, Ra and Ra'et replenish our energy regularly. They possess our people, communicate with our people, replenish our people regularly. So we have an unending supply of that Ba and Bayat, because we have a Ba and Bayat within us. So we don't go along with these Asians and this pseudo-spiritual inferior nonsense. It has nothing to do with us. So when we engage in disorder, we do become like them, because they are spirits of disorder as well. The whites in our offspring includes all Europeans as well as Asians, all non-black people. So they are spirits of disorder. They incarnate that way. So when we engage in disorder, we begin to operate like spirits of disorder. We make ourselves repulsive. So therefore, we're cut off from that divine living energy and the replenishment of that energy. So then we begin to strain our bodily organs and systems and structures and glands, because we've made ourselves repulsive not only from order, but what extends from order, when you align yourself with order, is the free flow of energy that also replenishes you and energizes you. You cut yourself off from that, now you're stuck. So we don't engage in those kinds of things. We talked about, so that's sexual activity, procreative, improper diet, and behavior. We talked last week about emotion hardening. We talked about behavior. You're engaging in behavior that's disharmonious, and that begins to deplete your stores of energy and weakens you and begins to weaken your spiritual immunity. Let's talk about improper diet, for example, and then we're going to talk about just diet in general. We have a note that we put on our website, but then we also put on Facebook as well. I'm going to pull that up real quick. And as we're pulling this up, anybody has a question or a comment on the phone line, just hit the number 1. If you have a question or comment in the chat room, of course, you have to log in order to communicate in the chat room. Okay, and there was one quick question. So there was one, the question in the chat room says, what is non-ritual procreation? So when we talked about 2 different means of dealing with procreative power, sexual activity or procreative activity. So you have an expansive and contractive aspect of utilizing that procreative power. The contractive aspect, of course, is when you're bringing an ancestral spirit into the world. So when you engage in sexual activity, and one way to do that in a harmonious fashion, the contractive aspect of that is bringing an ancestral spirit and drawing that spirit into the world. That's one aspect of engaging in harmonious procreative activity or sexual activity. The expansive aspect of engaging in harmonious procreative activity is ritual sexual activity. The vast majority of the time when people are engaged in, if you're a married couple and you're engaged in sexual activity or procreative activity, most of the time it's not to bring a child in the world. Sometimes it is a few times to bring a child into the world, to bring an ancestor and ancestors back. So you engage in that contractive aspect of procreative activity. The expansive aspect of procreative activity is when you're engaged in sexual activity to stimulate, replenish your ba'et, and align yourself with your divine function in connection with your spouse. So whether it's expansive expression of procreative activity or the contractive expression of procreative activity, one or the other, either one is harmonious. Now, when you're engaged in non-ritual procreative activity, that simply means that you're engaged in sexual activity outside of bringing an ancestral spirit into the world or outside of engaging in ritual practice for the benefit, replenishment of your ba'et, and the alignment of yourself with your soul, your divine function, your ka'at. So you just engage in lustful activity. And when you engage in lustful activity or misguided desire, you begin to deplete yourself. Okay. So let me, as I'm pulling up this document, give me a second to pull this up. Just want to make sure we have the piece. As I'm pulling it up, I'll take a call. We have one call on the phone line. Michio on the phone line, number 6327. You had a question or a comment?
Yes, Hotep. I have a question about the diet. Far has meat, like chicken, beef, would that also hurt the energy within yourself?
Okay. In fact, actually, we're about to get into that right now. I'm just pulling up this document because I want to let people read along if they would like to.
Okay.
So we're about to get into that right now. So, and if it doesn't answer the question, then click one again, and then we'll pick it up. But we're going to get into that right now. I'm just pulling up this document. It's taking a second.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So there were a couple of them. One of the documents we published was Ancient Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African Associations of Divinity, with refraining from pork and other animal flesh. And the other one I'm trying to find right quick. Oh, there it is. And we wanted to pull it up just so we can show. So if you go to our note section on We Are Kwesi Akhan, or you can also type in Odwirafo on Facebook, you'll find this particular document, and we just wanted to show that to you. So we show the images of Asar. You'll find that Asar is shown as either black, with black skin, and in that context he's called Kam-Ur, or the Great Black One. He's also shown with green skin, Watch-Ur, the Great Green One. Green skin dealing, of course, with his capacity for fertility, regeneration, rejuvenation, and so forth. Black, of course, is associated with, especially in our Akhan culture and just ancestral religion in general, the vested power of the ancestors and ancestors. The term for black is Tum-Tum. In the Akhan tradition, the root is Tum, which means black or dark. There's also the root of the term Tumi, which means power. So, and power, Tumi, the spiritual power of the divinity. The term Tumi in Akhan, the spiritual power of the divinities, is the same as Ashe in the Yoruba tradition, deals with the spiritual power, the force of the Orisha, dispensed through the Orisha, dispensed through the Abosom, through the agency of Nyamewa, Nyame, the Supreme Being, and Olorun, Olokun, and so forth. So, Black is dealing with power, the vested power of the ancestresses and ancestors. When things become older and we blacken things ritually in our Akhan culture, like we blacken the gua, the so-called stool, we blacken certain things dealing with medicine to increase their potency. So we show those images of Asar, green as well as black. Now, we talked about earlier, stars are black bodies. Awusi in our Akhan culture is connected with Awusi Da, Akwesi Da, which is Sunday. Awusi, Asar, Awusi or Asar, as we call him in our Akhan culture. Every male born on Sunday is called Kwesi or Akwesi, meaning a servant of Awusi, a servant of Asi, and so forth. And the same with all of the Abosom, the days of the week. If you Kwabena or Abena, Kojo, Ajua, Kweku, Aku, and so forth, every Akhan person is named after one of the same divinities from H. Kemet with the same names. Of course, we have 11 articles in the 11 Abosom of the days of the week, as well as broadcasts on them. So, Asar operating through Sundays being connected with the sun. Of course, the suns are black bodies. Asar is shown with black skin. A black body is an object that absorbs 100% of all electromagnetic radiation, that is light, radio waves, and so on, that falls on it. A common image here is that of a brick oven with the interior painted black and the only opening a small window. All light that shines through the window is absorbed by the interior of the oven and none is reflected outside the oven. It is a perfect absorber. As it turns out, this definition of being perfect absorbers suits stars very well. However, this just says that a black body absorbs all the radiant energy that hits it, but does not forbid it from re-emitting the energy in the case of a star. It absorbs all radiation that falls on it, but it also radiates back into space much more than it absorbs. Thus, a star is a black body that glows with great brilliance. So when people have that definition of a star, a black body, now when we show as Akhan people that Awusi or Asi is Asida or Awusida, which is Sunday, that's because Awusi, the divinity of Sunday, he's in that regard, he's shown with black skin, Kam-Or, the black body operating through that star. At the same time, meaning the body of stars are black bodies. Any star is a black body. We talked about earlier on when Ra and Ra'at begin to move through the black substance of space and spiral through that black substance. After they're born of Nun and Nunet, they burst into the black substance of space, the first fire and lighting creation, begin to carve out black spheres, spiraling through. Those black spheres become the black bodies, and the spiritual energy of Ra and Ra'at penetrates those black bodies to make them illuminate. So now they become stars. So that's any star. But depending on the kind of energy and the frequency of energy that moves through a star, they give off different colors. Their bodies are black. That's the source. That's the foundation. They are black bodies. Then based on the energy moving through them, they will generate different colors. So our sun, the Oriya, as we call it in our Akhan culture, the Oriya, the sun, is a green star. Whose peak wavelength lies clearly in the transition area on the spectrum between blue and green. This is not just an idle fact, but is important because the temperature of a star is related to the color of its most predominant wavelength of emission. In the sun's case, the surface temperature is about 5,800 K, or 500 nanometers of green-blue. However, as indicated above, when the human eye factors in the other colors around it, the sun's apparent color comes out a white or even yellowish white. However, when you engage in ritual practice, you will see the green energy emanating from the star. When you invoke Awusi and so forth, also invoking Ra and Ra'at, you will see the green energy emanating from that divinity. And this is, of course, why you will see Ra sitting on his throne and wearing green, adorned in green and so forth. So now we give that information first and foremost to show there's a ritual association with Asar as far as being black and green, and connecting Awusi with the sun in the Akhan tradition, showing that direct connection to that physical orb that he's connected to. There was another article that we put forward. Let me see. We'll pull this up real quick. Hold on one second. That one we wanted to establish and if we don't find it, we can just talk about it. I just want people to be able to pull it up for themselves so they can download it and read it. Okay, here it is. So, again, it's one of the notes that you can find on our page on Facebook. So after we established the fact that all the stars are black bodies, including our sun, the Oriya, and since Awusi operates with the sun when he's in connection with the Ra, when he's called Asar Ra, he's connected with the Oriya, the sun. He's shown with black skin, but then also the sun is a green star, so he can be shown with green skin because of the rejuvenating power of the sun. Now, the next piece is called black superfoods and green superfoods. We know about green superfoods. We know about, the chlorophyll and so forth, and how melanin synthesizes the chlorophyll just like, plants photosynthesize. The melanin operates like chlorophyll, synthesizes sunlight, transforms sunlight into foods or energy for the body's cells to feed upon and so forth, just like plant, chlorophyll photosynthesizes sunlight. We talk about green foods, we know they're superfoods, but black foods are superfoods as well. Of course, the foods are color-coded to these Abosom, these forces in nature. The Abosom derive their colors, their sacred colors, based on their movement through creation, movement through space. And as they move through space, based on their energy complex, they generate specific colors that we can see, that we can attune to, that we can recognize. And we recognize that as the sacred color of the divinity based on their action, based on their movement, when they possess during ritual, when they communicate with us, when they manifest at the Unkomre through Adebisa or divination. So we know who they are, we know what their sacred colors are. We talk about here black foods, superfoods, and green superfoods in association with Asar, the black one, Kam-Or, and Asar, Watch-Or, the great green one. We talk about black sesame seeds, for example, black beans, black rice, black quinoa, soybeans, these various different things. All of the vitamins and minerals and the super rich, aspects of the foods that you find in green superfoods, you find even to a greater degree in many respects in black, quote-unquote, superfoods. In the same fashion, when you look at the various colors of the various natural foods, plant-based diet, you will find that the different divinities and their sacred colors are associated with these different foods as well. They're connected. The same divinities, of course, are connected to certain organs, like Heru, connected to the heart and cardiovascular system. Abinna and Binna, who are called Sechima and Sekmet, and Heru Behudet, are connected with the lymphatic system and immune system and so forth. So we talk about the systems that the various Abosom are governed by in our articles and in our publications. Also the sacred colors, as well as various other attributes and so forth that include these various foods that regulate different aspects of our anatomy. So we just wanted to bring that out. Let's get to this other article dealing with ancient Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African associations of divinity with refraining from pork and other animal flesh. And of course, all this is, getting back to the original point of your physical body is a shrine, a receptacle for forces in nature that animate the various organs. Your physical organs are shrines for the spiritual organs, your spiritual anatomy, your physical heart, your Ab is a shrine for the spiritual Ab, the heart, the spiritual heart-lung complex, the Hati dwells within the physical. The brain is the physical seat of the Ka, the Kayat. The heart, as well as the bloodstream, physical seat for the Ba and the Bayat, the divine bird that flies through the bloodstream and so forth. The pineal gland is the physical seat for the Akut, the Honam, as we call it in Akhan, and so forth. So we're talking about all these different spiritual organs associated with divinity. Your body is sacred in the real sense. And of course, in the previous broadcast, we talked about the text in the Runu Pert and Heru, talking about the different divinities associated with the various body parts and so forth. So all of this goes back to the reality and proving the reality that our bodies are sacred, connected to our Abosom, and therefore you do not pollute your body. We talked about procreative sexual activity, ritual procreative sexual activity, ritual procreative activity outside of bringing ancestral spirit into the world, dealing with diet as well. Some people will say, well, vegetarianism comes from the Hindus and so forth. It comes from the whites and their offspring who were criminals who invaded ancient India. And, of course, they were criminals. They had nothing to do with any spirituality. They didn't have any kind of religion at all until they came in contact with our people, learned about what we were doing, attempted to imitate perverted fragments of what we were doing and call those perverted fragments a system, which they do not have. And that includes dietary practices as well. Cave-dwelling Europeans were not invading India as vegetarians. That was not happening. So we talk about, and people, misinform on this point. So we talk about ancient Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African associations of divinity with refraining from pork and other animal flesh. So we show, and this is again on our Facebook page, note section. Coffin text number 157 from Quebec. O Batik of the evening, you swamp dwellers, you of Banebdada, which they call Mendes in Greek, ye of Buto, you of the shade of Ra, who knows not praise, you who brew stoppered beer, you who know why Rekit, Lower Kemet, was given to Heru. Do you know why it was given to Heru? It was Ra who gave it to him in recompense for the injury in his eye. It was Ra. He said to Heru, quote, pray, let me see your eye since this has happened to it. Because Heru's eye was injured in his fight with Set. Then Ra saw it. Ra said, pray, look at that injury in your eye, while your hand is a covering over the good eye which is there. Then Heru looked at that injury. It assumed the form of a black pig. Thereupon Heru cried out because of the state of his eye, which was stormy or inflamed. Heru said, behold, my eye is as that of which the blow set which made against my eye. Thereupon Heru swallowed his heart before him, meaning lost consciousness. Then Ra said, put him upon his bed until he has recovered. It was Set. He has assumed form against him as a black pig. Thereupon he shot a blow into his eye. Then Ra said, the pig is an abomination to Heru. Wish that he might recover, said the divinities. That is how the pig became an abomination to the divinities as well as men for Heru's sake. That's coffin text number 157. Then you look at the Pert Im Heru, misnomer at the Book of the Dead, so-called Book of the Dead, chapter of knowing the souls of Pe. And in the Pert Im Heru, the chapter of knowing the souls of Pe, it simply reprises what is found in the earlier coffin text. So if you go to that section, of course, you'll find various ritual prayers and so forth in that section in the Pert Im Heru that are reprising those same pieces from the coffin text, and they are represented in that section. So, in fact, we can look at a section here. This again is from, we already read from the coffin text, number 157. Now we're looking at chapter from the souls of Pe in the Runu Pert Im Heru. It says, do you know for what reason the city of Pe has been given to Heru? And he goes on to say, even I know it, though you know it not. Behold, Ra gave the city to him in return for the injury to his eye, for which cause Ra said to Heru, let me see what is coming to pass in your eye. And forthwith he looked at it. Then Ra said to Heru, look at that black pig. And he looked, and straightway an injury was done unto his eye. That is to say, a mighty storm took place within his eye. Then Heru said to Ra, verily my eye seems as if it were an eye upon which Set has inflicted a blow. And thus saying, he ate his heart, meaning he became anxious, lost consciousness. Then Ra said to the divinities, place him in his chamber, meaning his bed chamber, let him lay down, and he will do well. Now the black pig was Suti, or Set, who had transformed himself into a black pig, and he it was who had aimed the blow of fire which struck the eye of Heru. Then said Ra unto the divinities, the pig is an abominable thing to Heru, but he will do well, although the pig is an abomination to him. Then the company of the divinities who were among the divine followers of Heru when he existed in the form of his own child said, let sacrifices be made of his bulls and of the goats and of his pigs. Now the father of Mesti and Hapi and Dwamutef and Kepsinwef, the four sons of Heru, so the father of these four divinities is Heru, and their mother is all Set. Then said Heru to Ra, give me 2 divine brethren in the city of Pe, 2 divine brethren in the city of Nekin, who have sprung forth from my body, and who will be with me in the guise of everlasting judges, and then will the earth blossom, and thunderclouds and rain be done away. So, and the name of Heru became Heru Watch F, and so forth. So, again, that simply reprises the same episode that you find earlier in the Coffin text. It is reprised once again in the Runu Pert and Heru, the so-called Book of the Dead and so forth, later on. So we give those 2 pieces. Now, notice that Heru's eye became inflamed when Set, in the form of a pig, struck the eye of Heru. This is a major symptom of trichinosis. Trichinosis, also called trichinilosis, trichiniasis, is a parasitic disease caused by eating raw, undercooked pork or wild game infected with the larvae of a species of roundworm, commonly called the trichini worm. A classic sign of trichinosis, periorbital edema, swelling around the eyes, which may be caused by vasculitis. The Coffin text goes back to the Middle Kingdom, of course. The false religions had yet to be created. Moreover, this is not a result of influence from the so-called Middle Eastern India. The cosmology regarding the roles of Heru and Set are well established in ancient Kemet and Khanit Nubia prior to any invasion. So when they talk about Set taking the form of a pig, shoot Heru in the eye, his eye became inflamed or raging like a storm. That is the periorbital edema, the swelling of the eye because of the trichinosis, the trichine worm, when somebody's eating pork and so forth. This is divine prohibition against eating pork. And in the Coffin text, of course, at the end it says not only is it an abomination to Heru, to the divinities, it says that is how the pig became an abomination to the deities, as well as men for Heru's sake. So this is one of those divine prohibitions. If you look in the Runu Pert and Heru, chapter 30b, a portion of the text says this chapter should be read by a person purified and cleansed, who has not eaten animal flesh nor fish. Here, the ritual purification and cleansing, the Jida, the purification, is associated with refraining from consumption of animal flesh and fish. Notice that in the chapter cited above, 30b of the Pert and Heru, the appendix states that the chapter was found in Kemenu, so-called Hermopolis, in the time of His Majesty Min-Ka-Ra, by the royal son Heru Dadaf. This points to an earlier period in time, the 4th dynasty, so-called Old Empire, Old Kingdom. Again, there is no influence here from the Middle East or India. Now, what we're talking about here is the Pert and Heru. You're refraining from animal flesh or fish in order to be purified, in order to read this specific chapter and so forth and move forward in a harmonious fashion. That particular chapter, it says in the appendix, was actually found by the great one, Heru Dadef, during the time, it came from the time of Min-Ka-Ra of the 4th dynasty. So it's showing that divine prohibition associated with refraining from animal flesh and fish thousands of years ago, prior to any influence from the whites and offspring. Because, of course, you have some so-called black scholars who are talking about vegetarianism comes from India, which is nonsense. And there's no African basis for it. Now, let's give another African Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit basis for that. Jida, purification in Kemet, as we talked about earlier, is the same term, Jida, in Akhan, meaning purification. Jida means a celebration of purification in Kemet. Jida or Ojida is a celebration of purification in Akhan. In fact, our 7-day New Year celebration is called Ojida, which means purification, which occurs for us in September. So in Akhan culture, it also includes various forms of, in Akhan culture, the spirit of certain killed animals, Sasa, can attack a person. This must be taken into consideration. We make ritual prayers, apai, to accommodate this reality before sacrificing an animal or making aforeba, sacrifice. We also can engage in abstinence from consuming the flesh of an animal to mitigate the aggression of its spirit. That's one reason for abstaining from flesh, to mitigate against the aggression of a sasa spirit, the spirit of an animal who's fired up, angry because they were killed. We either engage in ritual prayer to mitigate or appease the spirit of that animal after killing, or we just abstain from killing the animal and abstain from eating the animal flesh to mitigate that possibility. We give a quote from another text. Traditional Ghanaians have a strong belief that some plants and animals have special spirits, sasa, as in the case with plants, or killed, as in the case with animals, can bring serious harm to the person. Thus, such plants and animals are not eliminated. So, once again, you have a cosmological foundation for the abstinence of flesh, as well as certain plant life, based on the sasa spirit that once released because of killing, out of harmony with order, that spirit will seek to attack an individual, and we need to mitigate against that. And one way of doing that is abstinence from consuming animal flesh and so forth. Now, finally, we should also note, we say it should be noted that because we as Afuraitkaitnit have always understood that it's unnatural for human beings to consume meat, we learned the ritual use of fire in order to transform raw animal flesh into a different substance, more akin to a mineral or a vegetable. Moreover, the quote-unquote cooking of food in general is related to the ritual consumption of fire. When we talk about the ritual consumption of fire, this is a ritual process. We learned the cooking of food. Some people talk about, cooking food. It eliminates the enzymes, and you shouldn't be cooking any food, and it should be raw food and everything else. We learned the ritual cooking of food, or the ritual consumption of fire, from the Abosom when they possessed and showed us how to ritually cook food. Just like when the Abosom possessed and write symbols into the dirt or the sand and point to the symbol and say the name of the symbol and make us repeat the name of the symbol. This is how we learned how to write medutu or hieroglyphics or atinkra symbols or veves and so forth. This is where we get that from. The same thing with regards to cooking the food, applying fire and transforming the food in a so-called alchemical process, in that process dealing with the tumi of the Abosom, learning that directly from them through possession, so we can learn how to ritually consume fire and take fire into our system and send it to different organs and organ systems, the shrines of the Abosom within our body. We learned that from the Abosom. So this notion of following the white snare offspring, when they talk about holistic health and diet, and we simply ape or mimic everything they say, is nonsensical. We learned the ritual consumption of fire through the cooking of food from the divinity. And so we talk about that. We talked about that in a previous broadcast, but we brought that up here just to show that there's associations with the abstinence of flesh from the Afuraitkaitnit perspective. This is where it began. The fact that we learn how to apply fire to transform animal flesh for certain purposes into a substance that becomes actually a mineral. The further, if you fully fire whether it's plant life or even, animal flesh, and you keep firing that animal flesh, it transforms from the animal flesh back to its essential nature. You'll say, well, it became burnt. It became like a piece of charcoal. Yes, it became a mineral. It transformed back into a mineral in reality. Before it gets that far gone, it's closer akin to a vegetable. But when it's totally dried out and totally cooked, then it's become a mineral once again. It's no longer animal flesh. So there are gradients in between that. And using that fire, we're taking it from animal flesh back towards its mineral state, through the plant state, back to the mineral state. So we learn how to do that, migrating from different places. And in some instances, we engage that process in a surrogate fashion. But of course, our natural diets are plant-based diets. And that's always been the case. No different than elephants, gorillas, plant-based diets. Of course, other animals and so forth that are vegetarians, that is our natural state. So when we start consuming the blood and flesh and pus of, animals and so forth, because we've learned to do that, and continuously, we have no cosmological understanding about what foods we need to stay away from and why we need to stay away from them, we're imitating the whites in our offspring. Every Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit person comes into the world, as we said earlier, with an Abosom connected to their head region. But also you have divinity connected to your patriclan, a divinity connected to your matriclan. For example, in the Akhan culture, the Abosom, the father's divinity is the Abosom connected to your patriclan ancestresses and ancestors who have protected them for thousands of years, intergenerations. Protected you as well in your previous incarnation. You come back into the world, you're still connected to that force in nature. On your mother's side, you have a matriclan divinity, the Abusia Abosom, the Abosom of the Abusia, the matriclan, that connects you to that divinity. And therefore, you come into the world, you incarnate into the world, connected to that force in nature that is governed your matriclan ancestresses and ancestors for generations, transcarnationally, even when you were in the world in a previous lifetime, living somewhere on the continent, that same matriclan divinity protected you as well. So you have a divinity that governs your matriclan, governs your patriclan. Those are like the two bottom right and left corners of a triangle. The ahinasa and the apex is the divinity that governs your head. The patriclan and matriclan divinities give you the power to execute your function. The divinity that dwells in the head region gives you what that function is and the manner in which you must operate to carry out that function without creating disorder in the world and in yourself in the process. So when we deal with these divinities and we talk about dietary taboos and social taboos and so forth, they are associated with the divinities associated with our clan, the animal totems, the Achineboa connected to our clan, certain foods, certain sacred trees and plants and so forth associated with our clan comes directly from our ancestors. People on the continent, some of them recall which plant, which animal, which indriya, which plants, which achineboa, which animals and so forth are connected to their abusia, their matriclan, their ntoro, patriclan and so forth, and they pass that information off. We have come over here losing the fluency in language. We may not have recalled the names of specific plants and so forth, but we are still connected to these Abosom that govern our clan. So when we go out into the forest and we invoke the Abosom and evoke the ancestresses and ancestors, then they will show us which plants, and they will re-establish that catalog for us. They will show us which plants that we consume, which ones we do not, which animals are Achineboa animal totems for us, and which ones are not. And they will send those animals to us to communicate messages to us, to admonish us, to warn us, and so forth, physically, in our physical spaces, as well as spiritual. For example, we talked about the Asona Abusia, the Asona clan, the major animal totem, or Achineboa is the crow. We're part of that clan. Then the Nananom Umsamafo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of yours that are Asona, from the same clan, they will send the crow, the Kwakwa Dabi, to you. They may fall and drop down and sit right in front of your car when you're on the road, or walk near your car, or show up on a power line when you walk outside and call directly at you, warning you of specific things, teaching you different things, guiding you away from certain things and so forth. So they will show us what our Achineboa are again. They will show us what things are taboo dietarily, socially, and otherwise. So we're giving all this information just to show there's a cosmological basis for whether we're dealing with dietary, or dealing with sexual activity, dealing with behavior and so forth. All of these things point to our physical bodies as shrines of the Abosom and how we need to maintain the sanctity of the physical body. Of course, sleep, sleep, as it's called in the Akhan tradition, is a major way to regenerate the physical body. Exercise, when we engage in exercise to strengthen the body, become Aakhuamuman, dealing with strength and power, a hard body, Aakhuamuman, strength, power, hardness of the body, and so forth. What you're doing when you're engaging in exercise, and we talked about Aboa and Kwa previously, When we engage in exercise, we're dealing with a ritual practice, ritual activity. Just as you will use blood, moja, blood, having a blood sacrifice, and the blood carries energy, carries the power, divine living energy of the animal that's sacrificed. And you give that as an offering, a provocation, provocatory offering to the forces in nature. It's like you can go and push a lion. When you push a lion, then you provoke the energy of the lion to come back on. If you speak to someone and you're in a dark room and all you can hear is sound vibrations, those sound vibrations stimulate your eardrums and provoke the energy of the person to come towards that sound, or at least acknowledge where that sound is coming from. When you put an offering out, whether it's a food offering or a blood offering, moja, blood, sacrifice, and so forth, the energy that is emanating from that offering provokes the energy of the Abosom, and that provocation causes a response from them to us. So we utilize that blood sacrifice. When you engage in exercise to make your body tuned instrument like a wind chime to resonate and reverberate the energy of Ra and Ra'at. That's what we're doing when we tone our bodies or tune our bodies to make them such instruments. What you're doing in the process when you engage in exercise, like when we deal with Aboa and Kwa, that ritual movement connected with the Achineboa, animal totems, moving our bodies in the forms of the animal totems, Achineboa, and invoking these animal totems in that process. That exercise is a ritual process to align us and realign us with divine order and so forth. What you're doing when you're flexing muscles and sending blood to the different organs and organ systems. We talked about the organs and organ systems are shrines for the divinity. So when you flex the muscles and tense them, and you send extra blood and they begin to swell and so forth, you're sending a blood sacrifice to the shrines of the divinities within your body to feed them and nourish them and rejuvenate them and rejuvenate yourself. When you feed them with that energy, then that opens up a channel from that shrine within your body to that divinity outside of your body. Now there's a free-flowing communication. You can align with that force in nature. So this is what we're doing when we're engaged in exercise, not only from the Akhan perspective, but from Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, ancestral religion in general. No matter what group you come from, this is what we're dealing with. Whether it's ritual song, ritual dance, ritual movements, we're dealing with the movement of energy, moving blood, the moja carries, the ba, the ba'at, and you're carrying not only the blood, but the energy to the various shrines of the Abosom within your body to stimulate them to rejuvenate yourself and to align with the forces in nature so you can get back in alignment if you're off track. If your mind is wandering, your mind is wandering, you're leading towards disorder, misguided behavior, misguided desire, lust, and so forth, malice, ignorance, and so forth, emotional instability, you can begin to realign yourself, regulate the flow of that energy. Give a blood sacrifice to the shrines of the Abosom within your body through ritual movement and so forth. And that ritual movement also aligns us with our Nsamanfo, so they, the Achineboa, the animal totem of the ancestral clans, will come to us and inform us in a harmonious fashion. So let us, real quick, we'll go back to the call and make sure, Michio number 6327. You called in earlier. I just want to make sure, did we answer the question with regard to the dietary piece?
Yeah, she answered the question. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, we appreciate the call.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to go to the next call on the phone line, number 6254. You had a question or a comment?
Hi, I want to know for the animal totems, is it normal for them to come every day?
It varies. It depends on the person, depends on the situation, depends on what's going on. So they can come, on a daily basis. They could come more than one time in a day. We just had a situation recently that came a couple of times on the same day. So
okay, because they come every day for me, like all day. The crows.
Okay. Now when something like that happens, of course, either Abosom associated with those Achinebois, deities associated with those animal totems, or Nsamanfo, ancestors and ancestors associated with those animal totems, are seeking to, communicate. So then when you go to your Nkomre, your Nsama Nkomre, your ancestral shrine, then you would like to inquire, ask the Nsamanfo, what is the nature of these communications? What are you trying to show me? Have you been neglecting something? Are you off track? Did the Nsamanfo direct you towards certain kinds of behaviors or certain kinds of activities that you have not been engaging in, that you need to get back on track with, or if they're warning you of something that's coming up, or a decision that you're about to make, and they're dissuading you from that decision. And when they send these animal totems, these messages, then it stops you in your tracks and breaks you from that coma. If you were had tunnel vision and were moving forward in a certain direction where they were trying to stop you, to snap you out that coma and make you reassess what you're doing and go to them and see what's going on. So you engage in that kind of query with the Nsamanfo to see what's happening, see what's taking place.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Medase, we appreciate the call. Okay, next phone call on the phone line, number 5251. You had a question or a comment?
Hi, yes. I had a question on a dietary piece where you said, for the most part, eating meat is not good or a taboo. Now, what if you're into bodybuilding, because I study a lot of bodybuilding, and they say you need meat for protein and to build muscle to get bulky or whatever, and they were saying that if you look at a lot of vegans or vegetarians or whatever, they're really skinny or whatever. So I wanted to ask you, is it possible on a vegan diet or whatever to build a large amount of muscle or whatever? Or what is your opinion on that? Because the mainstream society, they say you can't really be a vegetarian and bodybuilding at the same time, or your body's not going to grow or whatever. So I wanted to ask you about that. They say you're malnutrition because you need about 150 grams of protein a day, and when you look at a lot of vegetarian foods or whatever, they're not high in protein or zinc and other things or whatever. So I wanted to get your opinion on that.
Okay, so now the first thing is you want to Google black vegetarian bodybuilders. And you see them more often, people who have done that kind of investigation have found out about these kinds of individuals before, but especially now with Facebook and a lot of people just posting a lot of pics on Facebook, you'll find that there are many black bodybuilders out here now that are promoting themselves specifically because they're vegetarian and showing that you can be vegetarian and vegan and still be a bodybuilder. The reason why that many people who are still make an association and say, well, vegans are skinny. Like Dick Gregory said, when he became a vegetarian, he gained 100 pounds because he thought that he could just eat whatever he wanted to, and he gained 100 pounds very quickly. And a lot of people do that. I know people who are, as soon as they became vegetarians, they thought, oh, well, that means I can eat as much as I want because I'm not eating meat anymore. They actually gained weight and became, quote unquote, obese. So the reason why you don't find, a lot of people engage in that sometimes is because of the culture. People often who get involved in vegetarianism, they were coming from a Hindu perspective and stuff like that. That also goes along with the culture. So they're not even focused on anything like bodybuilding. They think that's vain and things like that. So, they have a different mindset. But people who are not, controlled by that kind of mindset, there are many people who are vegetarians. I've known individuals who are vegetarians who working out and, very big, muscular and everything. The protein sources, the protein comes from plant life. Even the animals who eat that we consume, beef and everything else, they're not carnivores. Cows are not carnivores. They are consuming plant life. Very muscular animals are gorillas. And, of course, they're vegetarian. And elephants are vegetarian. So clearly, vegetation has enough to, allow you to grow. But if you Google like black bodybuilders or black vegan bodybuilders, you'll find a number of individuals telling their stories about how they were able to maintain their size by simply, innovative ways of taking in protein from plant-based sources.
Okay. And also I had a question on the true origins of physical strength. Now, I also studied, they were saying that real strength actually comes from the nervous system and the electromagnetic energy you build in your body. You see sometimes like smaller people lifting huge amounts of weight, or even with I've seen Haitian voodoo rituals where people committed like superhuman feats, like eating grass or something like that, or lifting heavy objects, or which I don't know if that's coming from them, but I'm sure it has something to do with like the spirit that's possessing them, whatever. They increasing their electromagnetic energy. But are there ritual practices where you can like increase your strength without getting bigger as well? Like it's because like they say the true origins of strength is a nervous system or whatever. So because also they also say when you build muscles too much or whatever, like that increases the amount of blood that your heart has to send. And a lot of people who are like really bulky or whatever, they have heart attacks or something like that because their muscle takes up too much oxygen. So is there a way, like in African culture or whatever, to build up strength without so much size or whatever? Or
yeah, and in fact, so and it's two things like you mentioned. There are two things when they're dealing with power, and you see these superhuman feats and things like that. Number one, intensifying, really even just on a lower level, the electromagnetic energy moving through your nervous system. People begin to build up that lower level energy, just like somebody practicing martial arts and so forth. They build up that energy, and they quote unquote fill up their pores with the electromagnetic energy, so they can. The average person try to break a board with their hands and they'll hurt their hand or break their hand. And even a young person who's been taking martial arts and learning how to intensify their breathing practices, take in more electromagnetic energy, they can fill up those spaces within their quote-unquote bones, quote-unquote, and then they can explode through the board without breaking their hand because they're using more electromagnetic force upon contact to break through. It's not necessarily that all of a sudden their skin became so tough or they have, huge muscles. It's that filling in of those empty spaces with that electromagnetic energy. So that's one thing, to intensify the energy. On the other hand, as you said, sometimes people who are engaged in moving certain objects and doing different things, yes, they have one of either a discarnate ancestral spirit, or sometimes if they're dealing with the Abosom, they have these forces of nature moving things as well. But just like with what's more popularly seen or observed when people are watching people practice martial arts and so forth, and whether they're doing things with fire or they're doing all kinds of, quote-unquote superhuman tricks, and people are like, wow, how can they do that? How do they intensify their energy? The same thing takes place, for example, in West Afurakani, and South Afuraitkaitnit, and wherever we are, with regard, for example, in ritual dance. You see people doing those same kinds of things. They're not as popular. You probably can see a few more of them on YouTube and things like that if you look for them. But they're doing things with fire and burning themselves with fire and getting stabbed and stuff like that. Brought that up before, as well as breaking things and all other kinds of things. Sometimes they're utilizing a discarnate in some eye. Sometimes they're simply intensifying the life force energy within them to break through certain things and intensify their, energetic output. But ritual dance helps them to engage that process because they're stimulating that life force energy no different than somebody engaged in martial arts. And there are various forms of ritual dance, not just dancing for divinities, but ritual dance associated with war, ritual dance associated with, agricultural movements and things like that. You'll find that in the culture.
Okay. And
so those two different things.
Okay. And I just got one more question on the sacrifices you were saying about the for the Nanana Unsamanfo and the Abosom. Now, let's say certain people, I guess you could say they're homeless or they live inside, they're like off the grid type living. Now, could you set up a shrine like that? Because on the PDF file for the Ankhomo, you said it has to be a clean area or whatever. Now, and you have to wear all white or whatever. Now, what if you're, just hypothetically speaking, like what if you're like people who live in extreme circumstances, like if they're homeless or something like that, could they still set up like a shrine out in a forest area, or just not even have a shrine? Maybe they don't have access to incense or anything like that. Would they be able to communicate with the Nanana Unsamanfo with a strong enough connection without all the ingredients that you listed on that PDF file? Because tried a few times to go in like a wooded area and pour libations, and I guess it's not, I waited there for like an hour or whatever, and I really didn't feel anything or whatever, or feel like I was really communicating with anything. So I just wanted to, now, is it supposed to be, it's not going to be instantaneous, but as far as communication, but is there some type of, like how long does it usually take for you to like really make contact with the Nanana Unsamanfo? Because I feel like, because I didn't have all the ingredients. I did it like in a forest area. I didn't even have, I just had used water, and I was using Akhan language, saying a prayer or whatever. But basically my question is for somebody who may live in those extreme circumstances, like off the grid type living, could they just, with minimum ingredients, like, do they really need all that stuff, like incense, frankincense, myrrh, like, because sometimes, too, like, when you go into a store that sells incense, like, you don't really know if they're selling authentic frankincense and myrrh, or it might be low quality. Does the quality play an important role, or, like, so basically, that's my question, or whatever.
Right. So now, when we gave the basic breakdown of a general shrine, those are some basic things that you can utilize. However, remember in the article we would say you can communicate with the Unsamanfo wherever you are, because they're connected to your physical body, which is their shrine in the world, their specific ancestral shrine. They have two major shrines. Their own physical body that was buried, which is, of course, the major shrine for them, and this is why we would mummify the deceased. When we mummified the deceased, what we were doing is crystallizing the body, making the body into a crystal, and now it becomes an ancestral shrine, the most potent ancestral shrine. And we knew, of course, where our, cemeteries were and so forth, and even in America, like, 100 years ago, 80-plus years ago and so forth, our grandparents would bury our deceased under the floor of their earthen floor of their homes, or in the backyard and so forth, before this whole notion of having big cemeteries that you have to drive, 40 miles away to, after a funeral. So the body itself is a major shrine, but the other major shrine for the ancestors is your body, because you are a magnet for them, and you will bring them back into the world. So you can communicate with them anywhere, but again, when we talk about establishing a shrine, the purpose of a shrine is a magnification device to intensify their energy and have a more optimal communication that's more focused and intensified. But if you're in a situation where you can't establish that in someone's home and so forth, yes, you can go into the forest. Instead of having a candle, the sun is your candle, of course, you know what I'm saying? Instead of getting a stone, like we talk about having a stone and water and so forth in the bowl and the candle, or you have those things outside. You have the Earth Mother, so you don't need the stone in that regard. You have the candle, which is the sun itself. Of course, you utilize some water to pour libation and so forth. So you can do that at the base of a tree, or you can go to the river, we would say a base of a tree, and you can do that. Now, with regard to the time it takes you were talking about, of course, it varies from person to person, but check out the article in Samain Kom and the Seven Senses. And we're talking about different ways or means by which the Nsamampo communicate with their children. Some people, there are different communications, different modes of communication. Very often we have communication and we don't recognize them readily as communication. So they will communicate through, for example, the 7 senses, the 7 spiritual senses. We talked about some uncommon 7 senses. Of course, they're not just 5, there are 7. So clairvoyance is seeing beyond the physical. So some people will see the Nsamampo, the Abosom, some people will not. Some people, through clairaudience, they will hear them. They may not be able to see them, but they can hear the Nsamampo, hear the Abosom. You have other people through clairsentience, they can feel them. They may not be able to see or hear them, but they can feel them. They can feel something hot moving through their body when they're trying to communicate, or even if they're not even thinking about it, but ancestral spirit walks by, or they feel cool goosebumps and shaking and so forth. They can feel it, clairsentient. Some people, their sense of smell through clairalience, when a different ancestral spirit or Abosom comes forth, the smell, just like you can smell the scent of a person, they have a distinctive scent. When they make their transition, that scent they still have, and when that spirit comes forward, you can smell them, and that person is more clairalient. They can, detect the differences between ancestral spirits based on that smell, that aroma, and so forth. Just like dogs and other animals have, a heightened sense of smell and hearing and so forth. Some people are clairgustant, meaning their sense of taste is stimulated, whether it's sour or pungent or bitter or sweet or whatever. Just like somebody can smell somebody's scent, somebody can taste, just like somebody cooks some food and the aroma wafts through the air and you can smell it. And then you can also, quote unquote, taste it. Some people, when the Nsamampo come forward, that taste for the foods that ancestral spirit used to eat all of a sudden comes to the person. Their taste change. They stimulate them in that fashion. Some people are clair-equilibrant, as we call it. So they lose their sense of balance. They become dizzy when the Nsamampo comes to them, or they lose their sense of, equilibrium and so forth. And then what we call clairsentience, some people, their sense of time, the time continuum shifts when the ancestral spirit comes forward, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, 30 minutes have passed, and they don't even realize it just seemed like a minute has passed because they were in a different frame of, reference. So these are 7 spiritual senses, and they're different from everybody. Some people will be more inclined towards one or the other. The other way is 2 major ways that they communicate. Number 1, through dream. Major ways through dreams, so they will communicate and bring those messages, and you'll be talking to people in dreams, and you find out later on that, the information you were trying to study and learn about and were inquiring about and praying about and so forth, it came through the individual in the dream. Or they will plant thoughts in your head when you're at the shrine or after you've already left the shrine. They will plant thoughts in your head, thoughts that normally wouldn't be yours, things that you wouldn't know or you wouldn't, be focused on, and they will plant those, and you'll be able to determine the difference, begin to delineate the difference between when they're planting or seeding thoughts in your mind and when it's your own. And then you'll realize that they've been communicating for quite a while. They also communicate through Achineboa, animal totems, and so forth. You may not have noticed or paid attention to specific animals that show up at a certain time or more consistently in the course of your life than any other animals, even with regard to, in our Akhan culture, for example, a major Achineboa for Anansi, who is Set, who is Eshua, Legba, in the Yoruba tradition in Vodun. He's Anansi, or Kweku Anansi, Anansi Kokroko in our Akhan. He's Anansi, means spider. Anansi Kokroko is the great spider that weaves the web of Tumi, or power, that permeates all of creation, and all created entities have a place on that divine web, permeates the black substance of space. All plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life have a place on that divine web of energy and communication that he weaves. But he also manifests. His animal totem is the spider itself. So you see spiders showing up in the home at certain times and so forth. And we don't kill the spiders because they are messengers of that divinity and so forth. So beetles are connected, of course, to Kepra. So there are different ways that the Nsamampo communicate. You start paying attention to these different forms of communication and these different signs, and you begin to realize they have been communicating for quite a while. There may be a certain kind of animal, a certain kind of cat say you saw a cat with some light fur or something like that, and you see that on a regular basis, just like in ancient Kemet, you would have Etchima, Sekhmet, and Tefnut, and Mut, and Bast, and so forth, connected to feline divinities. When they manifest in North America, they will take up residence in a feline entity as an animal totem and send that cat, as opposed to when we are on the continent, send a lioness to show up, or send Osebal the leopard. You know what I'm saying? Here they would send the cat. And before you answer, there's 90 seconds left on the broadcast as far as the online. If you want to listen beyond 11:30, you must call in the next little bit over a minute, 657-383-0635. 657-383-0635. You have about a minute to call in. Only the people who are on the phone line will be able to continue to hear. We'll cut off in the next minute. So you have 1 minute to call in. 657-383-0635. All right, so these are different ways that they communicate. And for everybody, at some point through dreams, as well as the planting of thoughts in the head while you are awake and conscious, takes place, but then also through Achineboa animal totems and the various 7 senses. So check out that NHOMA and the 7 senses article as well.
Right, McDossie for that. A few things that you mentioned has happened. Like my dreams have become more vivid since I've been doing the libations in the forest area or whatever. Like I had dreams about like certain Africans, like being at a shrine in Africa or whatever. But I couldn't really remember the dream. It's clear, but I had 2 vivid dreams 2 days after I did the libations in the forest area. Also, I've noticed that I always come in contact with people that have certain information, like in person. I might be at a store, and then I'll overhear a conversation that's conscious or whatever, and then they might know something and then connect like that. But also, I was just curious about, the reason why I wasn't getting any type of communication, like direct communication, was because, like, you wouldn't know if your cry is detached. Like, could that be also a reason, like, if a person was engaged in, like, mild disorder, nothing major, average person, average black person in America, they grow up, might be a Christian or, I don't know, smoking cigarettes or whatever. So basically, with those things, detach your cry, and when you try to communicate with the now Samanfo, and you don't get any type of communication back, could that also be because your cry is detached? Because you would never really know if your cry is detached when you're trying to communicate and you're seeing nothing happening. So you could be wasting your time because your cry is detached. So does that have any effect? Or, trying to find out.
I know what you're saying. So, first, you would never be wasting your time as long as you have a cry. A krawa is never a waste of time. Only time people are wasting their time is if they're one of the whites in our offspring, they have no cry. They can do rituals all day long and no deity is ever going to communicate with them. Most black people in America, who've just grown up in, this debauched society and so forth, who are not like criminals, you know what I'm saying? They may be engaged in some mild disorder or whatever, but they're not like criminals. They're just uninformed. Their cry really isn't detached. It's there. They're just neglecting of it, pulling it in one direction and just ignoring it. So if you read the section in the book on the Okra complex, the soul of Akanfo, under the section of neglect, that's what most of our people are doing. But when you said that, not having a direct communication, Adai, or the dream state, and the Unsamanfo showing up at a shrine, that is direct communication. And very often, when someone hasn't developed a certain level of receptivity in those other 7 senses, then the easiest way for the Unsamanfo to communicate directly is through the dream state. And that's why it's very common for the dreams to become more vivid once you begin going to the shrine. And then the more vivid those dreams become, and there's, look, Unsamanfo showing up at a shrine, they're letting you know that They're on the case. They're communicating with you. They're through the notion of synchronicity. They will put you at the right place at the right time to come in contact with somebody who confirms physically what you've been asking about spiritually. So they are on the case already. And it's much easier for them because you're most receptive in the dream state. But the more you engage in ritual practice, then those seven senses begin to open up as well, and you'll be more receptive in those states as well. So they're giving you direct communication. That's they're confirming that for you just by showing up in that fashion.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that answers my question. So basically, it's like a muscle. You just got to keep working it and build up that strength. May Dashe for that. I appreciate the answer.
Okay. Yeni I'll say that. We appreciate the thought.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So we want to. Okay. Let me see. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything in the chat room. Okay, there was somebody who asked the question. I missed it. They asked about animal sacrifices. That was a portion. That was part of traditional practice. That has been part of traditional practice. But what people are doing now is something a little bit different. There are certain animals that when their spirits separate, when spirits separate, animals are sent into the world just like we're sent into the world. Animals are sent into the world with a function just like we're spiritually, just like we're sent into the world for a function. One of them may serve as a quote-unquote battery, a repository for energy to be released at a certain time. And through animal sacrifice, they're released. And their spirit goes directly to Nyamewa and Nyame. That's their purpose to be sent. That's not just any animal, that's one particular animal. So if there was a time for an animal sacrifice, you must query the spirit of the animal to determine whether or not it's one of those animals. If it's not, then you can't do it if you're doing something correct. If it is, then, that's one of those animals. What people are doing now is they just kill any animal, because anytime you kill anything, just like if you grab a couple of magnets, depending on how large they are, they have some electromagnetic energy. And people are just killing animals to release a small little burst of electromagnetic energy, take that and utilize it, reroute it for their, short-term purposes and do a little something that looks a little magical for somebody, or project some energy towards somebody, feed a discarnate spirit. You know how people do to get that discarnate spirit to do something for them, those kinds of things. So they're not querying the spirit of the animal because they're not really engaged in order. So they can't attune, they don't know what's going on, and they're just killing animals randomly. And the more animals they kill, the more little bits of energy they get, but that energy runs out very quickly, so they have to kill more, and all of a sudden, every day they're talking about, we have to feed their shoe, we have to do this, we have to do that, and people don't know what the hell they're doing. And they learned that misinformation from people on the continent who have been corrupted, who have incorporated Islam and Christianity and ensconced it into the tradition. People don't even realize that they have Muslims sitting there reading Urdu and don't even know that they're not really practicing authentic culture. So this is why we must deal directly with our direct blood ancestresses and ancestors who are connected to us and born into the world with us to know who's who and what's what. Deal with the Abosom that we were born with to know who's who and what's what, and what we need to be doing, what we don't need to be doing. Animal sacrifice has been part of the culture, but it's not, everybody doesn't engage in it. Some people don't engage in it at all, and some people do. There are different ways. For example, that's a provocation of energy. Ritual song is a means by which you will the energy, those sound vibrations, to provoke the energy of the Abosom. Ritual dance is the way you wield energy and pull energy in through movement to provoke the energy of the Abosom. There are various different forms of provoking the energy of the Abosom, and it depends on the person and their clan and what their social taboos are, and dietary taboos, and everything else. So, just want to clear that up. All right. Okay, we have another call on the phone line. The TLO number 0212 on the phone line. You had a question or a comment?
Machiamo, greetings, Odwirafo. This is Brother Kep.
What's up?
Okay. Can you hear me? Peace, King.
Yeah.
You pretty much, within what you just said, you pretty much clear up what I was about to ask as far as people wanting to initiate you when you receive a divination, and it says you are supposed to be, a child of a goon or a child of Shango or a child of Yemoya or something like that. You know what I mean? And it's like you're supposed to be initiated or get scratched. But as you're showing that you're already born with that divinity within your head, so therefore that's what you're supposed to be going towards, correct?
Well, yes. Now, if somebody is a real diviner, like typically in a normal setting, like we would be living in a village, and we would have our family members and cousins and other people, and somebody in the family is, Akanfo or Abosom, their priest or priestess. That's their function. That a priest or priestess is similar to the pineal gland inside the body. Pineal gland is a light-sensitive gland that's stimulated by light, and once it's stimulated by the light, then it secretes hormones, which really take the form of directives to give instructions to, the different organs and glands and so forth. So in the physical body of the community, a priest or priestess, Akanfo, Abosomfo, is like a pineal gland. They receive the light of energy from the Abosom. They begin to oscillate or vibrate or get possessed and so forth, and then they transmit those instructions, and that's their function. And then they're blood related to us, and somebody in the family is that, so, it's naturally to go to them for a certain thing, that's a natural thing. Now, we get separated from that, and, we're sent into the Western Hemisphere and things like that. We still have people like that in our families. Most of them have rejected it and are in church somewhere, and they may not be dealing with that kind of practice at all or very minimally, you know what I'm saying? So we have to reconstitute our culture within our own blood circle. You
right.
may come in contact with somebody who's an authentic, somebody who's sincere, authentic, knows what they're talking about and stuff like that. Very often we come in contact with people who may be sincere, but they don't know what they're talking about because they've been initiated by people who were taking advantage of them on the continent, or people on the continent who didn't know what they were talking about. You know what I'm saying? And they're just giving you the same, same handful of Orisha. There are hundreds of Orisha, but the same handful of Orisha they talk about, everybody is a child of one of them. Somehow all the other
right.
hundreds of them they don't know nothing about. So if somebody's really really a child of the Orisha and so forth, if you're dealing with somebody who's really authentic, a real Adebisafo or diviner is really divining your Kra anyway, you're divining your Ori anyway, divining your Say, your Chi and so forth. That's what's really happening. They're showing you externally what your Okra has been trying to communicate with you internally. So if they did tell you that's what you are, you would still have to go back to your own Insamam for your own Kra to confirm that with your own people. So you never
right.
move forward with anybody unless your people direct you to move forward with somebody. If they do not, then you do not. If anything that anybody else says does not comport with what your direct blood ancestresses and ancestors say, the spiritually cultivated class of your family, ancestral family, then you do not move forward. And anybody who contradicts that, then you don't want to have anything to do with them. So every now and then some of our people will be directed to people because it turns out these people are actually our distant cousins or relatives who were forced over here as well. But very often what's happening is people are creating little pseudo-African churches. And they're getting followers and making money, and they've turned them into little Yoruba Eddie Longs or something like that. So that's what's happening.
Right. On that very same note, like what if the Baba has white people in the Ile and initiated by white people, initiate
right.
white people on top of it. You see what I'm saying? Like, how does that work
right.
with the Africans in that structure?
Well, instantaneously that they have absolutely no Orisha anywhere near the building, let alone in the shrine that they have. No Orisha has ever communicated with any cracker, any Odwirafo, whether they're Asian or white Hispanics or white Latinos or white Europeans or white pseudo-Native Americans. They've never communicated with any of them, and they never will. So anybody who has any of those entities in their house, then you know there's not an Orisha anywhere near that house. The only spirits that will take up residence in those pots, those so-called shrines, are the spirits of their deceased relatives, as well as discarnate, non-related spirits who are spirits of disorder, those who are not orderly. So they'll take up residence in those pots, and people go get the divination, and the little spirit will tell them, hey, so-and-so, listen, just like if you were on the cell phone, and we mentioned this kind of example before, if you're on the cell phone talking about, an illness that you were having, it was causing you a great deal of pain, and you were thinking about going to the doctor, and it's affecting your job and everything else, and you think you may need to go ask somebody, you may need to get divination because it's causing you a lot of problems. Somebody was standing outside your house listening to you say that, and then they ran to the diviner and told him everything he heard. Then you came to the diviner, and he cast the shells, and he said, well, the spirits are saying that you're having a pain, and it's affecting your job, and you don't know, and you're like, wow, these spirits must be real. Well, of course, it's just somebody transmitting information or relaying information. If that kind of individual dies, and they're just an earthbound, wayward, weak kind of spirit that couldn't transition to the ancestral realm harmoniously because they were disordered, it is those kinds of spirits that are conscripted by unscrupulous priests and priestesses, and they will kill an animal for them. They will use some energy for them. And just like when they were alive and somebody gave them some crack and all they wanted was that 5-minute high, and they would do anything, they would steal, they would rob, they would eavesdrop on somebody and come back and tell you what they said just so you can give them that high so they can get that high, and then 5, 15, 20 minutes later they're looking for that high again. When they die, they're still on that weak vibration. Their crack is that killing of that animal, that burst of energy that's released when the animal dies, that electromagnetic energy that's released. They feed off of that. It doesn't last for very long, and the so-called priest will tell them, you go listen in on this person and come back and tell me what they're saying. I'll kill another animal for you. I'll feed you. And they'll go and listen in at night when you're asleep, or listen in when you're on the phone, and that spirit will come back, tell the priest what's going down. They'll kill an animal for them. You come to the priest, they'll tell you everything about your life. And you're thinking, well, he must be real because how could he possibly know what's going on with me? And he doesn't know what's going on with me. He just had a crackhead spirit just giving information. So this is what these cats are doing. The people who are dealing with the white neurospring, those are the only kinds of spirits they can deal with. So any kind of disembodied communication coming from anybody dealing with the white neurospring, you know it's not a divinity, and you know it's not a spiritually cultivated ancestor or ancestress, because no spiritually cultivated ancestor or ancestress will ever deal with the white neurospring. So any disembodied communication is coming from a perverse, discarnate, wayward spirit at death. Very often, they're not even dealing with that.
And that would explain why they would tell you to put alcohol on your ancestral altar for your ancestors.
Well, now, it depends, because some people have gotten into that practice. Like, for example, in our Akhan tradition, it used to be people would pour water. Then they got into this thing where they started pouring nsafufo, which means palm wine. And there's a whole proverbial story about how the practice began and so forth, but originally it was pure, it was water that was used for libation and so forth. So people have gotten into that practice, but then when we start listening to our Samantha, they're like, well, no, we want you to go back to using pure, going back to using water. And then the people on the continent, for example, say, well, no, we use, palm wine. But then they get so Europeanized, they stopped using palm wine, and now they're using schnapps and gin and Seagrams and everything else, and talking about the spirits want Seagrams or Johnny Walker, some nonsense like that. What they would say, they'd be like, well, this spirit only takes Johnny Walker. Now, what kind of Negro spirit will tell you, I don't want water, you give me Johnny Walker or I'm not talking? That's not a spirit you want to be working with. So, but yeah, so some of those things are coming from a corrupted, culture. Some of them are coming from people just making things up.
I see. All right, as far as the warrior parts, like someone saying that you need warriors, you could get your warriors from somebody. How is that possible? As far as these same priests telling you that you need your warriors, you can't advance in your evolution unless you get your warriors, or this is happening to you because you don't have your warriors fighting for you.
Well, now this is the way Yoruba tradition coming from Cuba and other individuals in the Caribbean, as well as sometimes people on the continent, but primarily coming from Cuba and South America and so forth, coming into America. They start off with the leques and they deal with warriors and, you're Avarisha and everything, and then they go through different things and the way that they're doing things and the way it was developed there. Including, in fact, for example, in Bukumi, they're giving people 5 Orisha and so forth during during initiation. Typically they don't do that on the continent. And they would say that they did that to preserve, the knowledge of this different Orisha during enslavement and stuff like that, just in case, something happened with people and people needed to have these different shrines. But then the Yoruba people, we weren't just brought to South America and the Caribbean. We came into North America as well, and maintain the culture in North America under the form of juju. What are people dealing with juju if we find people are still practicing that? Everybody doesn't have the same approach to dealing with these things. Now, the way they do things in Cuba, amongst the black people in Cuba who are not infected with Catholicism and all that, because you have some who embrace that Catholic nonsense and have these perverted white images on their shrines. And when they have that, of course, the Orisha are not there. But then you have other people who are Afro-Cubans who have nothing to do with anything white at all. They keep all of that away from the tradition, smaller percentage. But what does that have to do with your blood circle? Do your Nsamanfo deal with that, that approach to the tradition? What do your Nsamanfo have to say about what you need to receive? It goes back to us reestablishing our tradition from our blood circle, not from what somebody else said, their own blood circle and what has taken place in their region for the past 200 or 300 years. What happened in our blood circle? And if some people, a lot of our people who got up in church and everything else, then we reestablish our culture from our blood circle because we come into the world with these Abosom and so forth. If through that process they direct us to somebody who's connected to us and they can really divine, then they direct us to somebody who can divine. But at least that direction is something that's informed and it's not just going somewhere blind. Right.
Indeed. Well, as far as you have up your ancestral altar already, and, I feel like I'm in tune with my Accra. So, certain little information come to me which I listen to and I am attuned to, which even lead me to your show. A couple sisters lead me to your information, and it just resonates like one in particular, Sister Isa Malik, Sister Akasua Budua Asante, and Sister Amasan Kofa, like within a 3-week period, all 3 of them link me to your information. And it's like certain things that I've even said before, which you verify, and just the way how you was able to go back to the information and actually prove it textually, you understand what I'm saying, ancestrally, is epic, groundbreaking. I mean, it's just a beautiful thing. It's unexplainable, So, meda asset for that.
Oh, Yeni Aseda. We appreciate that.
Peace, King. Thank you very much.
Meda Aseda. And we also appreciate the sisters for, tuning the brother in and just sharing the information like they do. We appreciate them. He mentioned the Sister Akosuya and Amma and Isa Malik and so forth, talking about people on Facebook who have shared that information to a number of different people. So we appreciate that, Mirase. And that goes back to that notion of synchronicity of the Nsamafo synchronizing events to make sure that we get answers to questions, physically confirming what we have been shown by them spiritually. Then they come forward to make sure we get a physical confirmation. They will put in the mouth of someone the information that they gave us spiritually, and therefore we're able to confirm what we've been seeking to, learn. So, okay, so it's looking like the server in the chat room is having a little problem. Plus, we're going to end it here. We went through the various calls on the phone line and so forth. So we will be back on tomorrow for Ojeda. We'll send a notification out for that. Yedase for tuning in. And again, of course, with regard to our books, the ebook versions of all 16 of our books are free. Go to the NHOMA page, the publications page on our website. The soft cover versions of all of our books we do publish as well. The 16 books, we print our own books in-house on our own printers in color, so they range between $8 and $11. And if you order 10 books or more, like the first 10 or more, then it's automatically 30% off. So you can check that out on the NHOMA page. That's a way to support the work that we are doing. Also, follow us on Twitter as Odwirafo. Follow us on Instagram as Odwirafo. Follow us on Facebook as Kwesi Akhan, or you can still type in Odwirafo or Afuraitkaitnit, and you'll get to us as well. We also have our own Ning site, separate social media network, Afuraitkaitnit.ning.com. That's our own separate social media work that we pay for, private, separate from the other social media networks, where we have individuals from here as well as around the world studying the same information, showing their study groups and so forth. We have people who have been forming study groups independently in different parts of the country. You can check out our FEKU page for that on the website, FEKUW. So when you go to our website, Odwirafo.com, you'll find links to all of that information, including the group dealing with the FEKU page dealing with establishing a study group, which you can do in your locale with one or more people, whether you do it in person or online. And when you go to our FEKU page, the study group page, Nanasom study group page, you'll see that we have a curriculum based on our publication in order. The first publication in the curriculum that we, of course, always recommend is Kukutuntun, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, dealing with the cosmological foundation of creation, the nature of the Supreme Being and the Deities, ancestral spirits, with respect to us, as well as the origin of the fictional characters who never existed: Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Moses and Aaron, and Solomon and Sheba and Menelik, and the various others, Brahman, Buddha, Allah, Yahweh, and all. So, again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning in, and Yebeshia Bio, we will meet again. That's it.